What if I told you America's most revolutionary economic changes emerged not from peacetime policies, but from the crucible of war? Wars didn't just cost money, they reshaped industries, jobs, and technology, permanently altering the economy, like a living organism evolving under pressure. Would women have entered the workforce in such numbers without World War II? Or the internet exist without Cold War defense spending? In this video, we'll uncover how conflict transformed lives, like one factory worker whose world changed overnight. Through these stories, you'll see how war didn't just rebuild economies. It redefined the way we live and work today. Here's something you probably don't know about the Revolutionary War. America's first financial crisis happened while the war was still being fought. The real battle was against both British troops and economic collapse. Paper money printed to fund the revolution became so worthless that people used it as wallpaper. Soldiers went months without pay because the money they received couldn't even buy bread. Washington wrote desperate letters to Congress, warning that his army might disintegrate, not from enemy fire, but from economic chaos. The stakes were life or death for soldiers waiting for pay, their survival hinging on a system that was failing them. That's where Isaiah Rogers comes in, a Philadelphia printer who never imagined he'd help invent America's financial system. Rogers started out printing pamphlets and newspapers, but by 1779, his presses were running day and night producing continental dollars that nobody trusted. Congress issued $200 million in unbacked paper currency, about $5 billion today, causing rampant inflation. Merchants like Rogers stepped in to keep trade moving. He began keeping ledgers of who owed what to whom, effectively becoming an informal banker. These handwritten records laid the foundation for America's first credit systems. The continental currency failed, but the financial relationships Rogers documented survived. In that desperate moment, a new chapter for American finance began. By war's end, politicians realized they needed real financial infrastructure. Rogers' role evolved from tracking personal debts to printing stock certificates for the first Bank of the United States in 1791. His presses, once used to produce worthless bills, now created the securities that funded the new government. The same hands that printed failed war money built the tools for national banking. You can see the legacy in old documents, how personal IOUs between merchants evolved into standardized war bonds. Early certificates show individual names and amounts, while later ones include mass-produced security features. What began as desperate improvisation grew into a formal structure. Those first shaky financial arrangements became the bedrock of American capitalism. Sarah Collins started her workday before sunrise in a Lowell textile mill that smelled of oil and cotton dust. In 1862, she earned $125 for a 6-day week, just enough to pay for her boarding house bed and simple meals. But when the Civil War demanded uniforms for 1 million Union soldiers, her life changed in ways nobody predicted. By 1864, she managed 6 power looms at once, her weekly pay jumping to $8. That extra money bought things she'd never owned before: proper shoes, a wool coat, even savings in a bank account. For the first time, Sarah dreamed of a future where she might have more than just survival. The war transformed how America made things. Factories that once produced civilian goods now ran 24 hours supplying the Union Army. The War Department demanded standardization: uniforms with identical buttons, shoes with interchangeable soles. On Collins' mill floor, supervisors timed workers' movements to eliminate wasted motions, creating a system that resembled an evolving assembly line. What began with blue wool jackets laid the groundwork for industries that would later build cars and appliances. Railroads expanded alongside these changes. Before the war, America had about 30,000 miles of track. By 1865, another 50,000 miles connected factories to resources and markets. The same trains that carried wounded soldiers from Gettysburg later transported Pennsylvania steel to Chicago stockyards, linking the nation in ways that outlasted the war. Collins witnessed innovations spill over from battlefield to factory. Army surgeons tracking infection rates inspired record-keeping methods that became quality control systems. Mills adopted inspection processes modeled on field hospitals. When Collins was promoted to supervisor in 1865, she used petroleum lamps, brighter and safer than candles, originally developed for military use. These changes made her wonder, if war could drive such progress, what might peace bring? By 1864, Northern factories produced 1.5 million uniforms annually, along with hundreds of rifles every 6 months. Workers like Collins didn't just fill orders, they built systems. The American system of manufacturing, with its interchangeable parts and division of labor, became the global standard. By war's end, Collins supervised 30 women in a factory, transformed by new machines and processes. Her skills, forged in wartime, became the foundation for industries that thrived in peace. The waitress who built the atomic age. Helen Kowalski wiped coffee stains from her uniform in 1941, earning 25 cents an hour serving Boeing engineers their lunch. The quiet clatter of dishes and the hum of conversation filled the modest cafeteria where she worked. 2 years later, those same hands gripped a rivet gun in a bustling bomber plant, the air thick with the roar of machinery and the sharp tang of metal. She earned 85 cents an hour assembling B-17 wings. Her journey from coffee-stained aprons to rivet guns marked a shift not just for her, but for an entire generation of women entering the workforce. In 1941, American factories built about 12,000 military aircraft. By 1944, they produced 96,000, with nearly half the workforce now women like Kowalski. She went from pouring coffee to reading blueprints, from serving meals to operating machinery once deemed off limits. Employers who had refused to hire women now trained them in skills that would shape their futures. Her paycheck told a complicated story. Women earned about 60% of male wages for the same work, but that still doubled what she made before the war. The average female factory worker's income rose from $457 in 1940 to $261 in 1944, giving women like Kowalski financial independence for the first time. That extra money didn't just change lives, it fueled the war effort. Victory bonds turned workers into investors. Before the war, only 4% of Americans owned securities. By 1945, 85 million people held war bonds worth $185 billion in today's dollars. The government didn't just fund tanks and planes, it created a nation of investors who would later buy homes and start businesses. Factories underwent a metamorphosis after the war. The same plants that built bombers now produced appliances. The Willow Run plant, which had built a B-24 every hour in 1944, turned out Kaiser Frazer cars by 1946. Kowalski's riveting skills transferred to assembling washing machines. By 1950, she owned a Levittown house bought with GI Bill benefits, a wealth-building opportunity unimaginable before the war. The war didn't just change paychecks. It reshaped who could work, invest, and build a future. Dividend David Chen opened his lab notebook at Los Alamos in 1958, sketching circuits for missile guidance systems no civilian would ever see. A Korean War veteran turned physicist, he didn't know those scribbles would help create technologies now in every pocket. His team's work on ballistic missiles led directly to the microchip by 1968 because the Pentagon needed smaller, faster computers for nuclear weapons. The Defense Department funded 75% of early computing research through agencies like ARPA. Chen's paychecks came from contracts stamped secret that demanded impossible precision. Each missile needed computers weighing less than 100 pounds, an absurd challenge when computers filled rooms. To meet it, Chen and his team packed transistors onto silicon wafers, laying the foundation of Silicon Valley. Chen's notebooks reveal how military innovations became civilian tools. Page 43 from 1961 details error correction codes for missile telemetry, the same math now protecting your text messages. Page 89 from 1964 describes networked computers sharing data between bases, a precursor to the internet. The military paid for innovation, but didn't control where it spread. Satellites tell part of the story. The first GPS network, completed in 1978 for military navigation, became civilian infrastructure by 2000. Chen helped design its atomic clocks, accurate to 1 second every 100,000 years. Banks now use those same clocks to timestamp financial transactions. What guided bombs in Vietnam secures your online banking today. When Sputnik scared Washington, Congress poured cash into defense research. Between 1958 and 1965, Chen's lab budget grew from $200,000 to $2 million. That money didn't just build weapons. It trained engineers, funded startups, and created tools no private company would risk developing. The microchip industry began with military contracts guaranteeing purchases regardless of cost. In 1972, Chen left government work to co-found a chip manufacturer. His first product? A processor for smart bombs. His second? The heart of early desktop computers. By 1989, his company held 14 patents originally funded by defense contracts, now worth $200 million. The same chips that guided missiles later powered spreadsheets. Chen once reflected on the irony. We built tools for war, but they ended up shaping peace. His story repeats across tech hubs where defense R&D built entire industries. The contractor who privatized war. Mike Johnson stood in the Kuwaiti desert in 1991 wearing army fatigues, earning $200 a month as a fuel specialist. 12 years later, he was doing the same job in Iraq, but this time for Halliburton, earning $12,000 a month. That tenfold increase captures the dramatic shift in how America wages war. The privatization of military operations. Johnson's career mirrors this transformation. Starting as an active-duty soldier, he transitioned to a defense contractor and later became a corporate trainer. The financial logic was clear. Why stay in the Army when private companies offered salaries 3 times higher? This shift wasn't just about paychecks, it redefined what it meant to serve. Privatization also reshaped job roles. Drone warfare, for instance, created entirely new professions. Programmers who once built video game engines in the 1990s began designing interfaces for Predator drones. By 2010, operators in Nevada could eliminate targets in Afghanistan during their lunch breaks. Johnson trained some of these teams, passing on combat experience to people who had never set foot in a war zone. The flow of money changed too. Traditional defense contracts funded tanks and planes, assets the government owned. Now modern warfare invests in data systems and algorithms that remain corporate property. Cybersecurity firms protecting military networks today sell the same expertise to banks tomorrow. Johnson saw this firsthand when his old Army base was repurposed into a data center managing global financial transactions. Satellite images reveal the physical transformation. Tank depots became server farms. Fiber optic cables that once routed drone footage now stream stock trades. Military technology has always spun off civilian uses, but the cycle is faster now. AI systems Johnson helped train with combat footage now detect credit card fraud. This shift is a double-edged sword. Privatization expanded opportunities but blurred the line between war and business. Tools developed for battlefield surveillance now monitor city streets. Johnson's team once tracked enemies by their cell signals. Today, that same tech helps retailers follow customers. The paychecks tell the story. In 1990, top Pentagon officials earned $100,000 annually. Today, defense tech CEOs make $20 million. When Johnson retired in 2015, his skills had shaped both military and civilian systems, leaving the boundary between the two almost invisible. America's economy wasn't built on careful planning. It was forged in the fires of war. From Isaiah Rogers printing money to save the revolution, to David Chen's missile chips powering your smartphone, conflict shaped our world. That microwave heating your lunch? Military radar tech. The GPS guiding your drive? Designed for nuclear submarines. Even the internet began as a Pentagon project. These innovations didn't just emerge, they were driven by war's demands. So, as you check your phone, consider this. Can we channel the same urgency and ingenuity into peace? Or will innovation always come at the cost of conflict? Finally, don't forget to subscribe, comment, and share to show your support. Every click helps crack open the next vault. This is Tales from the Time Vault.